Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Justin Skinner is a farm-raised entrepreneur, author of his first book, Professional Failure, and he's from the great Midwest. He's also a real estate investor. We're going to be talking about some of that in short-term rentals. He lives in Springfield, Missouri, with his beautiful wife, Kendra, and he enjoys traveling with Kendra, playing pickleball, and most anything active. I got to tell you, I'm hearing more and more about pickleball, Justin. I haven't seen it in a bio yet. This is my first time in a bio, but it seems like everybody's picking up pickleball lately.
Absolutely. Well, Corey, thanks for having me. Yes, I agree. Pickleball is all the rage. I know we were actually supposed to play tonight. We play once a week, and it's raining, so we're going to get rained out. But yeah, it's a fun sport that I feel like kind of brings together a bunch of different ages and backgrounds. So we've had a lot of fun doing it.
I love it. Well, listen, welcome to the show. We're going to talk about some of your real estate investing. We're going to talk about your book. Before we get to all that, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old, because my guess is that being a real estate investor and an author and everything else you do might not have been it for you. But back then, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Yeah, so your guess is spot on. I had no idea I wanted to be an author or a real estate investor. I didn't really have that in my family. And I actually wanted to be a professional baseball player. I wanted that from the age of 2 and from the first time my dad gave me a baseball. So that was kind of my goal and my focus. And I basically worked at that until I was 18, 19, and then didn't get the opportunity to play beyond college. And then kind of put my head down and started working other jobs and hopefully trying to feel my way through. But yeah, it's funny, all the roads and different doors and opportunities that have led to being an author and a real estate investor. Who would have knew? Yeah, well, listen, if you made it playing through college, you made it further than many of us who dreamed about being baseball players when we were 8 or 10 years old. So, That's true. That's true. I had a lot of fun in college. It was a lot of fun, but obviously it was a little heartbreaking having to stop after college, but sure. All good things come to an end.
Sure. Yeah, totally get it. It's interesting. Obviously that sports thing for many of my guests. More so. It'll be interesting to see how time goes on because it's definitely more so for my male guests than my female guests. But you would think that would shift as women's sports has become more popular and more of the girls are playing. Maybe they just haven't reached as high a percentage in podcast interview age yet to have that come up with my female guests as much. Any case, one more question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? It could have been something small when you were a kid or something early in your career, whatever comes to mind.
My first deal really I ever felt like I negotiated was our first real estate deal, honestly. And that was when we were, 27, 28. I really didn't have any much experience. And it was one that I just backed into. And we actually signed the contract. It was an off the market deal. Signed a contract with the owner. It was like a 5-page contract. We took it to the title company and that was it. And I remember my wife saying, "Is this even legal? Can we do this?" And so that was the first time we sat down. He basically gave us a price. I didn't even negotiate on price. I just said, "I think that's fair. Let's move forward with it and let's do it." So that was our first real deal, honessly.
I love it. And was that a single family home? Was that a multi?
That was actually a commercial building. So we had a commercial space, where we were renting the space down below. We had the first right to buy it. He wanted to sell the building, and then we had 3 lofts above it. And then from there, we kind of fell in love with real estate and all the things that come with real estate.
I love it. So you did that first deal. I assume that you financed it.
We did. Yeah. We actually had a banker that was a friend. I actually played baseball with him in college, and he helped us get a creative financing deal because we only had 15% to put down
Okay.
saved up. And he basically gave us a 5% loan on our equipment, our photography equipment, to help get to that 20% mark. So it was really creative, and there weren't a lot of people that would do that. But yeah, that first deal was creative. And man, I feel like I owe a lot to him for helping me get it done.
I love it. Yeah, listen, there's a couple of key points in there, right? Connections and relationship matter, right? People think, some people think that, oh, it's a bank. It's, they just have underwriting standards and it's about math. And there's a chunk of that in there, certainly, but definitely having connections with people who can help put together creative deals really makes sense. And I love that, 5% short on the down payment, and you found a way to get a loan based on different collateral and get the deal done. That's
Exactly.
that's really creative. Yeah. It's funny. I haven't thought about this in a long, long time, but it just popped into my mind. This is a little different, but when I lease, I started off my law practice at 30 years old in what's popular now, but back then it was a new concept to be in it was almost like an early Regis or WeWork kind of place, but before any of those existed. And a guy had these shared offices, but I didn't even have an office when I started. I had he just had phone and mail service. And back then, the technology to be able to have it come up on a computer screen and say Corey Kupfer's office and transfer that call to me in my studio apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan was like cutting edge, like new technology that they could do that, right? But in any case, when we moved out of that into our first office, we were so naive that we didn't realize that it wasn't like residential, that they were looking for multi-months, in a security deposit on a real estate rental. And somehow we negotiated and convinced our broker to put up his commission as the security and that we would pay him back over time.
Wow, that's a trusting
building on Wall Street.
That's trusting on all parties.
Yeah, it was a guy that my ex-partner, my partner at the time knew, but still it was crazy we got that done. In any case,
that's awesome.
So I love creative deal stories. So that's your first real estate investment deal. You said you mentioned a few minutes ago that sort of got you your appetite up for real estate. So what did you do from there?
Yeah, from there we actually all three apartments or lofts were filled, so we really didn't have to do much. And the payments from those three covered the mortgage payment. So really, it was a smooth transition. So that was really nice. We get kind of start just thinking about more real estate. We had a tenant that we unfortunately had to evict, and once she got out, we decided to give Airbnb a shot. So from that, we month one, we furnished. We had to obviously invest about $4,000 into furnishing it, and once we furnished it, we went ahead and gave Airbnb a shot, and it really, from month one, it blew our minds that people wanted to stay with us in this loft apartment. So really, the cash flow was about 3 times better than it was with a tenant in there. And from that point, we really started strategically thinking, okay, how can we buy Airbnbs? Where can we put Airbnbs and build our cash flow through real estate that way? And honestly, Airbnb is what really catapulted us into real estate and really being able to kind of roll our cash flow together and buy more properties.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know a couple of the folks have gotten into that business, and I sort of look back and say, wow, that's smart. Like what I had a house, I had a weekend home up in Lake Joseph. This is before we got our place out in California. And for many, many years, we used it extensively. And then we got to a point where we just weren't using it that much. And I had a interim period before Airbnb came in where it was tough to rent it because it was in the Catskills. It was on a lake. So it was a great property, but there wasn't a robust market. It wasn't in like some of the other vacation markets where you have brokers or even online. Yeah. So that place would sit empty for a while. And then finally Airbnb came in, and it just on a one-off, it made a big difference to me. And then, so you think I would have thought of it, but I didn't. So all right. So then you focused on purchasing properties specifically for the purpose of renting them out on Airbnb, right?
Correct. Yep. So we went forward and we found some properties locally with some residential properties, and this was before Springfield didn't have any rules against short-term rentals at the time.
That was on my question list for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there were no rules yet. So we bought several. Well, I say several. We bought 2, maybe 3 before the rules came out.
Yep.
And then went ahead and we just ran them. And I think there were some people that were scared that we were, hosting parties, but everything that everyone that we hosted was just single travelers or couples. So we weren't buying these massive houses. So we were buying small single family houses. The first house that we bought outside of our commercial building was a house in a nice neighborhood that we bought for $89,000. And it was kind of a drug house and it was the worst one on the street. And we bought it. And everyone loved us coming in because we fixed it up, and then we ran an Airbnb out of it. And then Springfield came along, and they came with regulations and all that. And honestly, it was fine because we weren't doing anything wrong, or we didn't really have to change anything. We just had to pay the fee, and then basically tell the neighborhood what we were doing, which they were already really in approval for. So It didn't change much, and honestly, I think it just kept some people from diving in at that point because they just thought it was too much hassle.
Which was actually great for you competitively, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they did not put in, it sounds like for example, there's significant restrictions in New York City and Santa Monica, which is close to my place in California. They require 30-day, 30-day or less. The same thing in New York City, 30-day or less. So that obviously changes the game a lot. Where you can't do, because Airbnb is really generally a short-term rental kind of thing, So they didn't put in any minimum stay requirements.
Yeah, they did. So basically, if you can only have a certain amount on a block, but we don't have requirements. If it's a short-term rental within the city limits, we have to obviously get a license. We have to get neighbor approval, and then we have to basically tell the neighborhood through letters what we're doing. As long as everything checks out, we're fine. But you can do 1 night, 2 nights. We don't have a minimum. The only thing is, if you don't get approval and get all those licenses, you cannot do anything less than 30 days. But we'll talk more about that too, and kind of what we did in the area of a triplex, because the other rule is you can only have 2 Airbnbs within 1 unit, and that makes things a little tricky. But we'll probably talk about the triplex as well here in a little bit, and kind of maybe some creative solutions to how you can traditionally house people but still advertise on Airbnb.
Got it. All right. So before we go there, let's talk about, so you need to notify the neighbors. Have you gotten pushback from any neighbors on the notifications you've done?
Yeah, really, the neighborhood meetings has been beneficial for the most part, and a lot of it is older women or older men coming in, and they really just don't know what it is, and so they're asking questions. So really, it's a couple hours of just meeting neighbors, and no one's ever been belligerent or anything, which is really nice. The only trouble we've had is you have to get signatures, and you have to get 55% of your neighbor's signature. So if there's 5 neighbors you have to get signatures from, you've got to get 3 of the 5. We have had some neighbors in the past that just ignore you, or they give you an excuse like, well, I'll think about it, then come back tomorrow and we'll sign it, and it just keeps getting delayed and delayed. So either if someone's not home, or we had to ship the paper to I believe California and get it notarized by someone who owned a property out there. So it can be a hassle, but for the most part, neighbors really haven't thrown that much of a fit when we explain, hey, this is what we're doing. We're hosting doctors and nurses. We're not hosting college students. We want someone to have a nice place to live while they stay here in Springfield.
Great. Okay, so let's move to this triplex thing, and you started to talk about the limitations on how many units can be rented out on Airbnb. Yeah. So what did you do with that one?
Yeah, so that was an off-market deal. It was actually a guy that I was learning under the commercial real estate side. He had it, and I kind of offhand said, hey, I'd love to find a triplex in this area. And he goes, well, I've got one. And he threw a price out, and it was probably $25,000 more than what it should have been. But at the time, he threw it out, and I said, okay, fine, I'll buy it. And I think it shocked him a little bit. But anyway, it's one of those things where you can actually, I learned that you can overpay for something as long as you have a plan and it still works out. Yep. So for us, we bought the triplex. We didn't have any plans to go in and do anything less than 30 days. So what we did is we just let all the current tenants and contracts expire. And as they expired, we went in and we fixed up and we cleaned up the triplex. So it was in a little bit of a rough condition, but we wound up overhauling everything. We wound up spending $40,000, $50,000 more than we thought we were going to spend, which I feel like it always goes like that. We put on a new roof, new gutters, and then we furnished it. And my wife was the genius behind that. But we furnished everything. Once we got everything furnished, we started putting the units one by one on Airbnb, and we just listed them as 30+ day rentals. So I think people are referring to it more as medium term rentals now. And then almost immediately, I think we put one up and we got a booking from a nurse. It's about, I don't know, a half mile from one of our hospitals.
Okay.
So it's a really convenient location. So we've got a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors and people that stay in that triplex. So again, it's a nice neighborhood, and it's just kind of a fun place to be. But that's one way to do the quote unquote short-term rental, and without, thinking about you're being illegal from the city or anything, because really we're adhering to every law. It's just a 30+ day rental. You have to book it for at least 30 days. And from that point of view, it's just really just a nice furnished rental.
So that's actually worked out for you to have the 30-day restriction because of, and listen, there are a lot of, it's an interesting play because, I know a lot of healthcare professionals who do travel like that and do stints, temporary stints and, whatever in various places because, it's a market where often they could work anywhere because they're needed, whether it's nurses or doctors or sometimes occupational therapists or physical therapists or, folks like that. Yeah. And they're looking not to stay in a hotel for, 30 or 60 days. So
exactly. And that's what we kept hearing. Our two largest employers in Springfield are the two biggest hospitals. So we just kept hearing nurses that would come in and say, I'm sick and tired of staying in a hotel, like I'm by myself in a room, or I don't have a kitchen. And that's really where we just we got into that, and we just kind of kept pushing it and feeding it. So
great. So have you continued mainly on the single and small, like the small multi, like the triplex kind of, duplex, triplex kind of investments?
Yeah, we haven't bought another triplex, but we wound up building. So the last 6 deals we've done, we built 4 brand new houses, but they're all traditional rentals. So we're trying to go more passive at this point because we realized that if you have too many Airbnbs, you just can't do it unless you have a team. So we're trying everything going forward to be more passive. So we did those 4, and then we built in Branson, Missouri. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we built a short-term rental there in a little community, and we're having a management team run that. And then we're building another short-term rental as well there. So the last 2 we've done are both kind of lake deals, and we've loved it so far. Just the hardest part is when you build new is furnishing the entire thing, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So what has, that analysis of building new. So, well, you talk about 2 things. The first thing you talked about is building and then getting like long-term tenant, like,
just traditional rental
stuff. Okay. Traditional rentals. And you're building for rental, not for resale. Right.
Correct. Yeah. So basically what we found when you're building new, at least in this area, is we were able to build below what it was going to appraise for. So once we got these completed, we had, an extra 40 or 50 or sometimes 60,000 in equity immediately bought in. So the amazing part was when the banks were a little more generous, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, we could go in with really little money down, and we could put $10,000 down on a new build, get it started. And then if it appraised out and say we finished it for 220,000 and it appraised for 300, well, we don't have to bring anything else to the table. Right. So that we basically would get into, a $220,000 house for 10,000 down on basically a commercial deal. So we did that with the lake rentals as well, or lake builds. And it's just worked out really well because we can kind of redirect that down payment money into furnishings and just making it maybe a little nicer. So we've enjoyed doing that, and I think we'll continue to as deals make sense.
And you have this extra equity in these places. So are you leaving equity in, or are you pulling equity out? You're refinancing any of that and pulling cash out for additional deals?
So not on the new builds yet. We do have the equity. I'm okay. And the reason I'm leaving the equity in just because I don't know the future, and I don't know, if there is a market drop or a dip, whatever, I don't want to get in a scramble to try and cover equity. So we have enough built in now where, let's say the market drops by 30%. Well, we still have enough in there to be fine, and we're not going to hopefully get any calls from banks saying, you know, you need a margin call or something like that. So that's the plan. We had a couple other places that we just paid off. We have drawn some money out of those and refinanced or done a line of credit if we need cash. But I think the biggest thing is we're just not in a hurry to build this huge multi-million-dollar portfolio, and we just want to go at a slow, steady pace and really not overstretch ourselves, because I've read and I've just seen people that they get into too much debt and then one little thing goes wrong and the whole tower crumbles. So we'd rather just go at it slow and steady. And even if we're not using every bit of equity that we have, we feel comfortable and good about going forward.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, because in the real estate investment industry, there's often this view of, leveraging everything you possibly can, using every dollar effectively so that, the money's not idle and you can buy even more properties. But you're right. I mean, that's all good when things are booming and cruising. But you see so many examples where people get hurt when they're over leveraged. If there's a market correction or, whether it's overall or whether it's a particular area or whatever it is. So, I love it. And listen, folks who are listening on the audio only version, which is pretty much everybody, because we don't do a lot on the video, but may not know how young you look, but you got some runway, you got some years, no reason to rush, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I've got a lot of wise people around me that hopefully kick me back in line. So yeah, for me, I just don't need to get in a rush. So I agree. I have older men that say, hey, here's where we are. If we could go back, this is how we do it. And I just want to be humble enough to say, you know what, fine, I'll do it your way early. I don't need to make the same mistakes. I'm good with that.
Yeah. I love it. That's excellent.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to share around the real estate investment, whether it's a fun deal you've done or any lessons you learned or whatever? And then I do want to talk about your book and what else you have going on.
Yeah, I'll kind of tell you one a failure that might be a fun story. We came across a property in a smaller town outside of Springfield, and we had kind of done our due diligence. I went out there, I met the owner, and he wanted to sell it for a specific price. And I don't think it was just astronomical, but it was maybe around $300,000. And it was an old car wash that had been basically renovated into these little garages. So anyway, he wanted to sell it. He said, hey, I've got a tenant that's willing to pay this amount. And so on paper, everything looked good. I met the tenant, all that. As we were getting closer to closing time, I kept trying to get a lease. I said, I'm not, luckily in the contract, I said, this deal is only good if I get a lease signed before we close.
Contingency for the lease, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, someone told me to do that, and I threw that. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble. So anyway, we got closer and closer. The tenant just kind of ghosted me, would not say anything. I thought the guy was trustworthy. Long story short, wound up the whole plan was just to basically sell it, and then he was jetting, and then we were going to get left holding the bag. So luckily we kept going, and we said, look, we're not closing without the lease. We wound up walking from the deal. The owner threatened to sue us. And luckily the lawyer said, it's in writing, like you never got the lease like you promised, you can't do anything. So that was a moment where we actually didn't get the deal, but I'm very happy that I had some people around me that gave me advice to do and put that wording in place. Otherwise we would have had a really rough situation in our hands. So that was one that didn't work out.
Without that lease contingency. Yeah, exactly. That was a condition of closing. Yeah. So
exactly. So that was one that didn't work out. But I'm very thankful it didn't.
Now it sounds like this, but were the tenant and the landlord like really in cahoots? Was this some sort of scam plan,
apparently,
or this was
wow. I don't know if they were just scared but I think what happened was the owner had put in a lot more into the building than what he had wanted, and he was just trying to get it back out. So even though the building wasn't worth that, and maybe I can think the best of him, but just how everything lined up, I just think that they might have been in cahoots together and trying to pull one over. Luckily, I didn't get get, or that didn't happen. So.
Hey, listen, when the potential bad deals are the ones you didn't do, that's great news because, I don't know even the most successful of whether it's real estate investors or corporate investors or entrepreneurs in general or whatever, who doesn't have usually at some point in their career some deal that actually they did do that went bad. So, it's great. It's great when the ones that go bad are the ones you don't do. That's much better scenario than ending up in a bad deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. So, all right. So tell us about, so Professional Failure book came out in April, right? Tell us about the book. What is it about? I mean, obviously by the title, I guess we're talking about failure, with professional failure, to give us the angle.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of a book I started writing. I kind of started journaling and gathering stories. I heard so many stories and podcasts about people being successful, and which is it all and great. But I just almost got tired of the stories of like, this is how I did, this is why I'm so great, because I made these choices. So I started writing kind of about it and thinking about it. The more I thought about it, I just thought about all the lessons I had learned from my failures and from, failings in my life. But at the same time, I never considered myself a failure. So I kind of just came from that mindset and thought, well, if someone's going to do this, or someone's scared of failure, or they don't want to be looked at as a failure, how can they navigate that? So that was the genesis of the book, if you will. And the more I wrote on it, the more clarity I got on the subject, I guess. And it was really fun to write. And honestly, it's been really fun to kind of see some fruit from it, and maybe see some people push through that fear of failure in order to get to a successful outcome.
So give us a couple of highlights, lessons from the book, things that people will get when they read it.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I kind of talk about is the importance of trying versus the outcome. So like, I think so many people just get caught up in success and fail. Like if, you go out and do something, or let's say you're in sports and you lose a game. Well, to me, the success is in the trying, the going out and the competing. That's success. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. That's not necessarily how you should keep score, even though obviously you should keep score. But I think that's one of the big key takeaways, is just that mindset of, I'm going to try, I'm probably going to fail, but I'm going to try anyway in spite of that. So that's one of the big ones. And then another big one is self-talk and just giving yourself grace, because that's something I struggle with, to be honest, is I'm very hard on myself. My self-talk can be very harsh sometimes. So as long as you're willing to give yourself grace and then give others grace as well, I think it will work out in your favor when you're navigating these failures.
No, it's interesting. I mean, these are such important lessons, and there's so many, we hear it in so many ways, and there are cliches around it. Like, people say on that last point, you hear this thing that we would say, if anybody talked to you the way you talk to yourself, you'd punch them in the face, or you would never
exactly,
again, or whatever, right? And then on the and no matter how many times people hear that, there's it's great that you hear that, or on the on the other point you made about failure, just trying. You hear all these cliches. Let's take it back to baseball. The best hitters in baseball fail 7 out of 10 times.
Exactly.
The 300 hitters, right? So, and we can hear that so many times, but so many people just need to hear it again in a different way, because they do those things. They're afraid to get on the court, or and put themselves in the game, or or they let the negative self-talk stop them. It's interesting because I spent so much time with entrepreneurs, right? I've been an entrepreneur since I'm 15. I mean, really, like, I had a business with employees, or let's call them contractors. I wasn't withholding taxes from the government, so when I was 15, and my clients are entrepreneurs in all industries, and I've been a member of Entrepreneurs Organization for a long time, and so this is who I hang out with. And some people think that we have this vision of entrepreneurs that we're risk takers and we're always out there and whatever. And some people who maybe work for other folks, or just see you as successful, think that means that none of the stuff you're talking about comes up, right? That we have no negative self-talk, that we don't have fear that comes up when we're going to try stuff. And it's not true. It's just that I think what makes a difference with entrepreneurs is that they do push through, right?
Yeah,
they do get on the court, and they do try, and they do fail, and they do, and then they don't get stopped by the failure. That's another piece. I don't know if you talk about it in the book, but but like, listen, we've all failed, and the question is, all right, are you gonna, some people fail at something or have a challenge at something and say, I'm never doing that again, and
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial spirit is, okay, all right, I learned from that, whatever. How do I do it better? Let's get back in the court, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the fun part too is meeting other entrepreneurs and almost sharing the stories of failure and lessons, because it really does humanize us. Like no matter how big, how powerful you are, how much experience you have, we're still all imperfect. And I think that's important to remember too. So no matter what we try or what we do, we're never going to get it right 100% of the time. So I think the sooner that we can realize that we're not going to be perfect and kind of skip that level of perfectionism that we expect out of ourselves or the people around us, I think really it would make our communities better. It would make ourselves better. And it would give us a chance to just say, hey, let's go for it. What's the worst that could happen? People are going to laugh at us. I just think it's a conversation we should have.
I so love this because generally, even when successful people talk about failure, right? They talk about it very quickly as just a prelude to the hero or the success story, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like 20 years ago I went bankrupt, but then I was, but then they talk about, and I always appreciate. We had I've mentioned this once or twice in the several years of this podcast, but we had an event many years ago in Entrepreneurs Organization in New York, and they've done it in other places that they called the Night of the Living Dead, and they really created an atmosphere where everybody shared like their worst, their most challenging failure, whether it was in business and life. People talked about divorces. People talked about even suicidal thoughts. Some of them, people talked about bankruptcies and business failures. And I mean, you name it. And it was specifically set up where that was it. Like you didn't talk about that as a prelude to your success story. You just shared the real stuff. And the thing that was universal, every story was different, but the thing that was universal is every person, and there were some, there were everybody in that room. I mean, to be an EO, you need $1 million in revenue. So everybody in that room had a certain level of success. And there were some folks in that room that were, really killing it, right? And maybe some of them had, were more open about sharing whatever they were sharing that. Some of them had never shared that, whatever they shared ever. But the universal thing was that everybody had something that was really deep, like really real. In my Authentic Negotiating book, I share about sleeping on an air mattress in my glass front office in Williamsburg, Brooklyn during the Great Recession, when I went from being, on top of the world with my lake house and everything to, my revenue going down 30, 40, 50, 60 grand a month in the Great Recession. So I get it. So I'm thrilled that you did it. I'm excited. I have not had an opportunity to read the book yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. You kind of talk about like everyone has those moments, all these like high earning individuals. And I've spoken with friends and people I know too that say, I could never do that. I could do that. I'm stupid at math or whatever, whatever it is. And I think they just beat themselves down, or they put everyone else on pedestals and they think, well, they don't ever make mistakes. They don't do this. Right. When I'm just here saying, look, we all make mistakes. I'm not perfect at math. I mess up on math all the time. I mess up on names. I mess up on whatever. I just don't want to beat myself up for it because I know it's just a part of the process.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's stats that show that a unusually high percentage of successful entrepreneurs are actually dyslexic, right? Yeah. Or they have ADD, ADHD. Like it's like there's all these things that stop other people are actually show often in a higher percentage in entrepreneurs. I think even this may not be true, so maybe I shouldn't say it, but I think Richard Branson's dyslexic or
I don't know that I can speak to that, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. So
I met some really, really amazing dyslexic entrepreneurs that just crush it. And I would have never known unless they told me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great stuff. So I assume the book's available in all the usual
it is, yep.
places.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and then we've got an Audible version as well that you can listen to.
Excellent. So Professional Failure, check it out. Definitely check it out. And then, Justin, if people want to find out more just generally about, the other stuff. Well, actually, before I say that, so real estate investing, author, anything else you have going on that you want to tell us about?
My wife joked the other day, and she's like, "Hey, we should like travel and play some pickleball tournaments." So who knows? Maybe we'll start traveling the country, and I'll be in California for a pickleball tournament at some point. I don't really know, but that's the fun part of sometimes the entrepreneurial journey, especially when you're on it with your wife too, is that sometimes doors open that it blows my mind and I just have no idea what's coming. So I am open to a lot of things and I just am trying to prepare myself for whatever comes.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So people want to, I mean, are you self-funding all your real estate stuff? Are you putting together any funds or investment, or what are you doing on the real estate side?
Yeah, just self-funding right now. I know we've talked about, I don't know a ton about syndications. I've got some friends that do some, but I've never, put together or taken other people's money to invest. And I think it's just more of a matter of trying to grow slowly. My wife and I are not in a hurry. And I think we've been advised to really be careful on who we partner with as well, just because when you partner with someone, you better know who you're partnering with. So we've tried to take that slow as well. So not saying that's never going to be in the picture, but we really haven't done that to this point. It's been all our own money.
Got it. So is there a website for anything, the book, or anything you do around the book as well?
Yeah, you can go to www.professional-failure.com. And then you can also go to Justin Skinner or JustinCSkinner.com. That leads to the same place. And then you can find me on social media through that website. I'm just at Justin C. Skinner. So feel free to check out kind of the content I'm putting out. And hopefully it's encouraging and exciting, and maybe motivates you to put your phone down and go outside.
Awesome. I love it. So Justin, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest ideal in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means freedom from all people, from oppression around the world, to why I'm an entrepreneur and I haven't had a boss in decades. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Yeah, I think ultimate freedom to me is the ability to make decisions maybe without strings attached. Because I know sometimes if someone is tied down, whether through a sponsorship or a job or whatever, if you make a decision and someone says, not so quick, if you do that, we're taking this away, that to me might not be ultimate freedom. So to me, ultimate freedom, is just the ability to make your own decisions and be in control of your own time. So I feel like we're still very lucky. I was very lucky to be born in the United States, and I'm very grateful for that. And, I think that we'll just continue to hopefully enjoy the freedoms that we have. And, again, coming back to freedom with money does play a part in that. So we do have to figure out how to take care of our money that we've been given and blessed with, and hopefully bless others along the way too.
I love it, Justin. Thank you for being a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Corey, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. Join the DealQuest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.coreykupfer.com/dealden. That's coreykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.